excited to host Victor Babursa. He's digital practice lead at SHL. So few things I admire about Victor. So right post his thesis, he posted his thesis work on orchestrating data, and it was that point I was like, how did he come up with that idea? And even like people from Hyper and everyone appreciated that thesis work. And then I was fortunate to work not closely with him, but like to be in the same team at Perkins and Will. And I always keep on seeing amazing work pushed by the SHL team, you, Daniel. And I was like, this guy is on to something. And then I followed the phase where wherever Victor goes, he keeps on winning hackathon. And I was like, okay, this guy has cracked the hackathon code for AEC. So all that to say, you're doing amazing work in AC Tech, and I'm glad to host you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. Yeah, it's great for me to be here. I remember watching so many of the episodes where you interviewed, some of my heroes on my work life. So, um, yeah, I just appreciate the opportunity and super excited.
Likewise. So, Victor, from civil engineering to current role, you've done so many things in life. What would be the top three highlights?
Oof, top three highlights. Well, that's tough to say. I think moving to Denmark was, something that completely changed my life, and it happened on a very funny way. Like I had no idea about Denmark a couple of months before I decided to apply. So I think that's one thing I would like to mention. The second thing, and I tell this to everyone, there was a period of my life where I was freelancing computational design, and that phase, even though it was quite short, I did just to supplement my income while I was studying. It just I've learned so much, how to talk to people, how to budget my time, how to decide and deliver something. So second thing, that's definitely like the period where I freelanced computational design. The third thing I think that made a big impact in my life is mentorship. I'm i'm very fortunate to have access to very good mentors. My first mentor was actually pushed on me because I didn't believe on mentorship before. It was not someone from my current job, someone. It was actually before I find my job at SHL. I had a mentor to find my job, and this person was just so kind to me, introduced me to some people, and then I kind of like, oh man, I want to do this in the future if I have the opportunity with someone, but I also want to have more mentors because it's kind of like cheating life. You learn a
Hmm.
lot in a very short amount of time because people just they've seen the problems you're facing. You're not special, even though it sounds like, but people have seen many problems in life. So that's the three things I think. The rest we can talk about hackathons, as you said, but yeah, those are very important moments in my life, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And tell us about your computational design journey. What were the things you were excited? How did you learn? In some highlights.
Yeah. I mean, it all started when I was doing civil engineering. I was preparing myself to be a structural engineer. And at a certain point in life, I just couldn't understand that there is this almost like beef in between architects and structural designers, and I was like, this is not possible. I mean, as an engineer, I want to be able to solve architectural problems through physics, and so I just wanted to do that for more complex, structures and challenges. So I started my computational design route, looking at structural design. My bachelor thesis was about um, bending active structures, so grid shells, things like this. That's what took me to Denmark. It's like pretty hot topic in Denmark for I think the last decade. There was so much research done on that, and that's where I started. And then during my masters, I still continued on that path. That's where, I tried things like Caramba. I've tried things like writing my own finite element algorithms and things like this. And then at a certain point, um, I kind of got the interest to program. Um,
Mhm.
I remember that spotted on my. I kind of knew this was about like 2018, 2019. I kind of knew that if I wanted to do more, I would have to learn programming. But then that's when I met Ryan, my first one of my first mentors, and then I just asked him like, "What should I do?" And I said like, "There's Python, there's C sharp," and then I picked Python. I was doing very silly YouTube courses, and it hasn't stopped. But that changed. The thing I had with structural design, it turned into problem solving. So I just got super interested on solving people's problem. And then that really, it didn't really matter if it was structural engineering anymore. I think the industry has enough problems that we can be a little bit relaxed about. There will be problems, that's one certain.
Yeah. What's your favorite structural building?
My favorite structural building, maybe it's not really a structural challenge per se, but I like the we call it Itamaraty. It's maybe the head of man, I don't know how to say this in English, but international relationships in Brazil. It's in Brasilia. It's designed by Nehemiah and some of the great structural engineers. I did, I do have maybe not a building, but there is a book that influenced me highly. That's called "An Engineer Imagines" by Peter Rice. That's like such a great book, and then I kind of related so much. It was an engineer who wanted to solve problems creatively, talking the story of Arup and how they did the Sydney Opera, and yeah, kind of where it all started.
Dude, I love that book. It's really good. And tell us about the computational design community in Brazil or programming. Like, what's the culture there?
Hmm. I think it's growing. Like I'm on a few WhatsApp groups. As you know, everything in Brazil it's large. It's not like in Europe where things are small. So if there is a group on WhatsApp, there is a lot of people, and they're talking all the time and all that. So it's kind of a different community. For example, I'm part of the Copenhagen computational design community and the Swedish one. Very silent. In Brazil, people are just like chatting all the way down, but I can see that we are a little bit behind, but growing. There's a lot of push, especially on structures as well. There's a timber designer and fabricator in the south of Brazil who's pushing the boundaries of computational design. I have a few friends who are working with Beam data and Power BI and things like this. I've been seeing a lot of speckle recently in Brazil, both on events, but also people just using like real estate developers showing their stuff. So I think it's growing. It's definitely not as well developed as the States or Europe, but it's growing.
Yeah. And if there's a listener in Brazil or other countries where their computational design or software development in AEC community is not mature enough compared to other countries, what's the piece of advice you would give so they can learn as much?
I think so. One thing, and this talks a little bit with my period as a freelancer. If you're working freelance, you can work globally, so even though you are in Brazil, you can work for people in China, in Germany, in the US. So I think you should leverage that, because the problems on, let's say, the major leagues, if you think like soccer, if you pick the problems from the major leagues, you're just going to be like really prepared for anything else that will come from Brazil, where problems are starting to develop. So I think using the internet, that's good advice. Um, the second advice I would give is, um, I think networking, even though networking is not always super exciting, it's important, to talk to people and look at, especially telling people like, hey, this is what I'm working on. What do you think? Getting feedback on your ideas. And I think that's pretty important. Yeah. And then the third thing that I would say, it's not too, like, it's pretty easy for you to look at, oh, this is what the US is doing right now. They're using LLMs to solve whatever they're solving, and try to bring that in, even if you don't have like a real good reason for it. I think protecting yourself from this kind of like shiny object following, it's a good thing to do.
Mm. So like curiosity driven and just keep an eye on like.
Yeah, I think keeping an eye on is always healthy,
Mm.
but as long as you can protect the problems and work on problems that are like relevant to people, it's okay. I just think that it's almost like certain regions of the world, they are in different phases, and then
Mm.
you have to apply. There is some steps, before you use an LLM. There is a step. The company might not even have access to I don't know, some enterprise Microsoft agreement
Mm.
or basics. So you got to cover the basics first before you look into those things, I would say.
I see. Can you share a bit about your thesis, master thesis work? What was the initial idea? How you figured out the problem?
Wow. Yes. Oh my God. That's it's been a while now, and then I've changed a few of my opinions, but I'm actually quite proud. So what I did back then, I was very puzzled by the fact that people using computational design or adopting technology in the architectural and engineering industry, they were not able to scale, even though we were living on the era where computing was kind of, now it's generally available, storage, it's generally available, it's something that you can rent for so cheap. So I was very puzzled by the fact that the intelligence that we've been building with computational design and some algorithms in the last 40 years, if you will, like even before Grasshopper and all those things, a lot of algorithms that has been written, but we are not seeing those things in the practice. The normal designer, the average designer on an architectural company, big or small, they are not applying those algorithms, or they are not transforming into computational designers. So what I looked into my thesis was, okay, there is a few products that are emerging that are becoming specific about taking those workflows and then running on the cloud or deploying in a scalable way. So what I did back then was to look at those products, what they had in similar, what they differentiated them, but also some of the industry on the side who were also deploying similar workflows and all that. And I guess that came from, the problem started, I think, from myself. So it was a little bit of an ego trip, because I started at SHL. I was just an intern, writing script. And then when I sent the scripts to people, they couldn't understand, they couldn't apply. And then it was a little bit frustrating to me that I had to do um, the thing. And it sounded like it was wrong. You promise that you're helping people, but you're actually just, scratching your own itches. So that's more or less where it started.
And were there any times where you got stuck, or what was the bottleneck?
Yeah, in the end of the thesis, I thought that I would be able to propose a solution, but in the end, I just didn't had enough time to come up with. So I came up with a framework,
Mm.
and literally, it's not like my framework. It's just I captured what Hyper was doing, or what Pollination was doing, and then I said, like, this is more or less what they're doing. This is a diagram for
Mm.
people who want to do their own workflow engine. They could start from here, because I've seen, like, when I was doing my research review, I've seen some of other industries, and they had frameworks, to build those workflow engines and process engines. And I don't think we had one for architecture or engineering already, to incorporate things like that's highly specific. For example, not all industries work with geometry. For example, one of the examples on my research was Spotify. Spotify had a workflow just to train their listings algorithm. They developed their own workflow engine, but they didn't have a geometry problem, right? It's Spotify. It's just files and users and metadata. So that was one of the parts of the framework, and some other highly specific things from architecture industry. um, yeah, but uh, yeah, in a few moments I felt stuck when I actually realized, okay, maybe I'm not gonna do anything. I did a few, samples of coding that I added to the appendix, but I didn't build a product or I didn't build anything. And that was a little bit worried. But then I had a good supervisor. He came to me and was like, hey, dude, this is the most normal thing in research. Sometimes that's your next research.
Hmm.
you know?
But
Yeah,
I saw the framework and like I can tell how much thoughtful it was, and you adopted principles from other industries, software development. And I was like, yeah, this is some fresh cutting edge idea which it's uncommon like other research work or thesis. So that's why like it stood out for me. So
nice. Thanks. I appreciate the comment.
yeah. Tell us like once you post graduation, what kind of automations you did. Give us few examples.
Yeah, so when I started on this computational design, it was a lot of environmental analysis at the very start. That because I came from an engineering background, so I had a good grasp of it. Like, not all architecture schools, they teach the physics in ways that you can look at Ladybug and apply. Sometimes you need to understand how indoor comfort works and so on, a little bit of physics. So I had that, and then I felt really comfortable applying things like Ladybug, Climate Studio. And I started with this, developing internal library of workflows. There was a library that already existed when I joined my current company, so I was working on refactoring, and then also a little bit of design automation. Back then, modeling complex geometry, rationalizing things, um, and then quantity takeoffs was also a big thing. When you're working on CAD software, quantity takeoffs are not given. It's not like in BIM software. So there was a lot of that as well at the very beginning. And conceptual design, doing massing proposals and getting areas out of it. A lot of that as well at the beginning. Yeah.
It's amazing. Your favorite plugin in Grasshopper, and you already mentioned like Karamba, so something.
My favorite one. That's tough to say. I don't think I have a favorite one. Um,
Or you appreciate the complexity that the plugin has done, like when you use it. Oh, this is super useful, or either in physics, optimization, or anything.
mhm. I think. I mean, this is one of the plugins I think I've used the most. It was actually Speckle, and
Hmm.
and 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 it was not the Speckle that exists today, but one that's a bit old. But it was just so nice for you to construct objects in a way. And I remember like teaching my colleagues in university, like um, object oriented programming through Speckle. How
Hmm.
do you create
Oh,
you create a person by giving a name, a last name, and an age. So, and maybe that was my intro to object oriented programming back then, where I didn't know any Python or anything like that. And it's one of my favorites because I've seen it evolve. Like if you look at some of the plugins, they stay more or less the way they are. You know, the good
Mm.
ones like Lunchbox, a classic, Ladybug, of course, changed a lot, but you know, it's kind of the same. But I think Speckle changed in a way that's kind of interesting to look at. Um, but yeah, I was using the basics. I also was a little bit like of a minimalist. I didn't have
Mm.
many plugins installed because I always wanted to, you know, do some stuff. But you know, sometimes it's just easier. So I had always Lunchbox. I sold so many scripts on when I was a freelancer that there was just like Lunchbox. Maybe I should pay a beer to Nate and some of the guys. Um, yeah, pretty good plugins.
I see. And I was curious to know, wh- have you ever tried decoding how a plugin component would be working? What would be a code logic?
Yes, yes. I think this is something that all computational designers should do. You should take, you should take the easy ones, maybe an extrusion, maybe a meshing algorithm, things like this, to just understand how things work. And I think everyone tries to make like a faster one. Um, and I think that's a great way to learn, you know, because some of the internal algorithms on the plugin, they have some extras, like, you know, let's say tracing or logging. And when you're doing your stuff, you don't need all that crap. You're just like the pure logic. I did a lot of that. Yes.
Yeah. Victor, any tips on, let's say, a computational designer has a script and sometimes it could get spaghetti or like very complex and you want to share or increase adoption of that script within the firm? Any things that work better from your experience?
Yes. I think so. One. I this is like a rookie mistake. I've been there. You you want to have one script, you know, and if sometimes I see scripts and they're very big, and I was like, I don't even know where to start, you know. So
Yes.
my if I could give a tip, if you're, it's okay to split the script into 5 scripts. Also, it's okay to have manual steps. You know, some
Mm.
people want to make the whole thing automatic, and they don't want to click anything, even like if I did this so much. Oh my god, now it's coming back. You know, you want to pick something from a list instead of having a drop down. You would have like a list trying to find the correct index that matches the correct strings. Like, dude, um, this is not where you save time, and this is not. This is actually where you lose people. You know, people
Mm.
who would look at your script and it's like, what the hell is going on here? So today, when I'm writing scripts, I usually start with a number. Like, if I'm doing, let's say, geolocating geometry. The first one I would say I would call one dash import string dot
Mm.
ga, and I will move on to two, so that I have short scripts. It's a mess, you know, and sometimes it slows you down, but it's so much easier to work with. You can, you know, this is something I've learned from programming many years afterwards, but the concept of mocking, it's amazing. And you know, when you split your script, you can just take the an intermediary step, you save it to a file. You don't need to run the whole chain again. You just have that mock data. Maybe it's not even real data, it's just something that you use to test. And then when you have this big spaghetti script, it's just impossible to do that.
Mm.
Possible, but it's like a drug, you know. You're on the flow of connecting things and you forget about, oh, maybe this should be a step here. There is a funny component in Grasshopper called the dem. Not people make use of it, but it's exactly to do just that, you know, just save that data so it doesn't trigger anything behind of it, and you can move on with your logic. Yeah.
Interesting insight and tip. How can one create a computational design team or culture which is thinking about automation first and like not just Okay, how to identify the right set of problems to work on? How do you prioritize?
Yes, this is something that I've I've noticed with time, Meyer, the how to prioritize problems and how to pick things to solve. And it's actually quite difficult to do that. It's not simple. I think just the concept of being automation first, it worries me a bit. Um, so I would start by saying to people maybe not to be automation first. I'm a big advocate for manual, uh, manual
Mm,
stuff. Even internally within the company, before we automate any process, one thing that I would do is like we need to be able to do manually first. If we
mm,
can make it manually, we can automate for sure. For example, when we're using a lot of the work we do, it's connecting to APIs. It's like if we can find the buttons that connect to the API and click them manually on a
mm,
certain step, we can do that. We should measure the time, like how long it takes for me to click the whole thing, and then how fast would be if all the clicks were done with code, right? So I think the first step to start an automation is to look at the manual step and then perform the manual. Many people start automating tests. You wouldn't believe. I think you know this, Mayer, because you're also like in the industry. A lot of people start automating tasks before even doing those tests manually, and yeah, you get a lot of surprises. I would say, and that's not so good. I think the other thing I do is most of the times people will come to problems to you, especially if you work on a large company and you're like I have a privileged position that my complete role is to solve those problems. Some maybe you are a part-time architect and computational design on a small firm. People will come to you um, in different times if a problem is important to them. The first time you listen to a problem, even though it might be the lucky one, I usually wait for the fourth or the fifth time. The first time you're going to receive the problem in a certain shape. In the second time it would be the same problem but in a slightly different shape. So having a little bit of a history,
mm.
I think it can be a good tip, I would say. It's tempting, it's tempting because after a certain time when you become proficient on Grasshopper or anything, like it's so easy to attack the code and attack the
Mm.
script and do a first step. But I think with time you notice that your time is more important thinking about what is the problems that are important, not the problems that have been text 7 a.m. in the morning or 9 p.m. the previous night. Yeah.
I see. We have a question from Meherzad. How the doc should be ordered or prepared for applying for computational design job positions? Uh, what is your advice for someone looking for CD roles?
It's tough, I think. um, Looking for first of all, I think computational design roles are quite rare. So if you're not on a big center like I don't know, New York or London or big cities, you will probably have to relocate. And then if you have to relocate, you have to know a little bit of the context of the place. So applying for a computational design job in Copenhagen is a little bit different from applying to a computational design job in New York. So I think location is plays a fact. You have to understand what is important for that region. For example, in Scandinavia in general, right now, it's very important that you have some sort of sustainability background, and so on. So I think having a context of the place you're applying to, it's important. The next step into that is like, is it possible for you to get into some sort of network with someone that's working on in there, maybe on the same company, maybe on a different company, That's one of the things that happened to me the first time when I was looking for a job. My mentor, and she was just an architect, she knew one of the computational designers on another studio in Copenhagen, and then she just booked a call, and then I had the opportunity to talk to this person. Like usually, if it's like a different company, it's even easier. You can just say like, hey, I'm from Brazil, I'm looking at this job and I would really love to apply. Do you have 15 minutes just for me to ask a few questions about Copenhagen in general? I think if it's not the company you're applying to, they would be open, right? Because if I'm supposed to be if I'm managing the job ad, I don't want people asking me
Mhm.
for calls because it's just not proficient. But you can look around, I would say. In terms of the documents, I think that varies so much. I can tell you how I evaluate applications. Usually I would look into what's the thing that you shared publicly. So if you have GitHubs, if you have LinkedIn posts, thing that went public, I really appreciate that, because it tells me that you're passionate about what you're doing, passionate enough that you went through the barrier of, I'm just gonna post this, even though it's not good. You have this, you know. So I think if you want to document your work, make it public, in any platform you would like to do so, because I think CVs and portfolios don't really apply for computational design jobs. Uh, I would say, yeah.
Damn, that's a great piece of advice. Victor, any problem which you are not currently working now, or you don't have bandwidth to work on a year, but you think industry or someone in the industry should solve it?
Oh yeah, damn. Should I even say this? I don't know. I like this
Unless you
one.
want to do your startup.
I like
Yeah.
this one too much. Not because I think it's unsolvable, but it's just I've been thinking a lot. Also internally within Perkins and with other firms, we've been talking about this everywhere we go, and I think, um, I just wanted to see more design applications that are real time first,
Mm,
like multiplayer. I think we are seeing the new ones for sure are doing that. I'm a big fan of Rayon. Rayon has a big multiplayer feature, and some of the others they are like coming in. They're real time first, and what I'm really interested in is because like I think today if you're a startup, you can do a real time app with not a big hassle. But what I'm thinking in is like, how are we gonna bridge, between our file based systems, make them real time? For example, I work a lot within Revit files that range between 500 megabytes to 2 gigabytes. How do you make 2 gigabytes of memory um,
mm,
real time? You have to have that memory allocated somewhere on the user's machine or in some sort of server. You have to keep track of changes. You have to do all of this stuff that platforms like Figma, Miro, all of those things. Like people say, like, no, but Revit files are too big. I was like, can you think of like how many nodes exist on a Miro board or on a Figma files? Like every arrow, every pixel, every frame. This is not the challenge. I think the challenge is how do we write an adapter
mm,
to files, Revit files or whatever. There is a lot I think I noticed today in the industry. The recent product is like you push something to the cloud and then you get something on the other side. What I've noticed with working with design teams is like the loop is just too long. People will have to publish their model or send this to the cloud, and then when they get the feedback, they get a feedback on the model. They don't get feedback on their design actions. When I move a wall, or when I insert an element, or when I move an element, and this is just so important for a design tool, I think that's how, if you look at the other industry design industries, maybe, I don't know if Adobe and Photoshop are canceled on the internet, but you make a change on Photoshop, you see it. You make in Figma, you see it in Miro. It's quite clear, your actions, and maybe that's the level of maturity that we are right now. We have to push first and then execute something on the cloud and then get the value. But I would really love to see in the next few years that the push is not like a complete push. It's just sending messages. This element changed, or this and that, and so on. I think platforms like Speckle, but also technologies like data exchange from Autodesk, they are going into this path. Um, I'm just, I don't know if we're gonna have it, to be honest. Maybe what we gotta do is just move on to the new platforms or the new apps. For example, in case of Autodesk, that would be Forma, but some of the others, Quonic, it's fully web based, and some of the others on the market right now. Yeah,
But that's a very like unique and interesting, also challenging problem. Like,
the
I would
way I
like,
think about it, Meyer, is like, I always talk about when I'm talking with my colleagues, like Nick. I talk with Nick a lot about this. It's like, it's just like Netflix. You don't need to stream the whole movie. You just need to
packets.
stream
Yeah.
the frame, and then people will watch the movie, and then they will get something out of the complete movie. Sometimes you just want to watch a scene, and so on. So I think there is a lot of streaming we could look into it. It's just the fact that those files are locked and they need some sort of license to be worked on. This is such a crystal in the industry. But I'm sure people will think of solutions. People are very clever.
Yeah, I was seeing like, especially on like GeoJSON, and like Cesium does that at another scale where, even in Mapbox they have, depending on your zoom level, it will only call and load the right packets, and like we don't need to load the small MEP detail if we are still in the perspective zoomed out view. So for AEC, maybe it's not the zoom level, but it's like what's the sequential loading, or if you make a difference, you don't send the whole file, you just have a diff and send that packet and just re-render it or some. So it requires a different strategy in itself. Like,
Yeah, I think the comment in there is because we work on this technology stuff, and for us it's so tempting to send the whole data or extract the whole data. Oh, we're gonna send the whole thing. But most apps, and when I say apps, is like a solution to a problem. Most solutions to problems that you build, they have their business logic to be implemented, and most of the time you have a need for only parts of the data. So I think it's not about us writing some sort of data extractor application. It's more about us finding maybe a little utility where you says, like, for my app to be built, let's say I'm building a facade app, I need all of the facade elements with their materials, and then it's just like picking, this is what I need, and then, because otherwise you have to stream the whole movie, and we're back to square zero. Yeah, so I would challenge people: don't solve this problem of streaming, solve a problem where you have to start with small data and then grow with time. I think this is an exercise we're trying to do internally at work right now. It's like we have locked kind of data set that we believe is super important. How can we silently, not telling anyone, just increase a little bit? Like, okay, if we have a extraction time of maximum 5 minutes, can we write better code that we can put some hidden elements on the package and still below 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 1 minute? And this is kind of like eating the vegetables, right? Because if you can have these small increments, I yeah, I'm also like when I'm implementing those solutions, I'm not usually in a rush. I like to do things slowly and see how they are gonna grow with time, because it's so tempting to just jump on and say I'm gonna do the massive data extractor class, and it's gonna have all of these methods and so on. So I try to start small and ask people like, what is that you're missing, and so on. This is like a big deal to me, and also a conflict, because as a developer, uh, it's almost like an instinct to jump, but I try not to.
Victor, out of many AC Tech products you have used, what's your like what's the UI UX that stood out for you?
UI UX that stood out for me. Um, I think even though I'm not a user, I follow up Rayon pretty closely. I have my room modeled in Rayon. That's
Hmm.
my design skills. Um, and then I use that model for me to test whenever they release a new thing. What I really like about Rayon, and this is back to the topic um, that we just discussed, is like it's 2D. You know, I'm pretty sure they're clever enough to write their geometry engine to be 3D, and they're probably working on it. I hope, but they locked up and they said like, this is what we need. It's 2D, it's line based, and we're gonna make it amazing. So if you open up Rayon, it's gonna be smooth, it's gonna look nice, things are gonna work. And that's the thing, like it's not gonna do everything to you, uh, but whatever it do, it does it with excellence. And I feel like we miss this on the current how do you say, enterprise AEC applications like Revit. Right, just look at the ribbon, you know, the
Mhm.
Rhino ribbon or the Revit ribbon. So many buttons. There's, I mean, if you want to learn Revit, how many hours you have to spend before you actually learn all of the ribbons and all of the things? While I think the things about new products and new technology, you have to be able to jump on quickly and understand quickly and come up with something real quick. So yeah, maybe this is kudos to Rayon. Not that I'm a user or anything, but I think they're on a good direction in terms of user experience, and then not solving the whole industry problem. Yeah.
I see. And it also made me think the last 2 decades where like horizontal apps where look at Rhino, it can do jewelry as well as residential. And maybe it's an opportunity like if Rayon is doing like 2D base, focusing on interior design and layouts very well, maybe just made me think what is like just hospital or just educational building design, and you limit all other like only limit to functionalities which that particular niche of users or categories interested in.
Hmm.
But it's also a lot of work to develop all the engine from scratch. And
And I think like if we start thinking about this part of like, should we, because a lot of the technology, for example, if you look at Silicon Valley, they would say like narrow down niche, go to a niche, and solve a niche. But I think the niche in AC are just too small. So you end
Mhm.
up with products that are super expensive. Um, so yeah, sometimes I talk to AC software developers working on these concepts, and what I tell them is like, look, for me the benchmark is Spotify, Netflix, and Uber. It's $10, $15 a month. If you come
Mm.
to me and it's like the price of Revit, I was like, can I deliver a building the same way I could, I could market myself and then be an architect and deliver drawings paying $500. But can we do the same with yours? Or it's just because yours has some sort of AI that needs to be maintained and is highly expensive. So we have to think about like, should we niche and
Mm.
charge a lot, maybe there is markets who are like pretty good on money, but yeah, and maybe that's also a lot on me, Meyer. I'm not super excited about niches. I would like to. I get way more excited about raising the ocean 1 centimeter than doing a mountain somewhere in the world. So this tells you a little bit about me. Don't take it. That's probably not good advice. But I like cheap software because it's easy for everyone to adopt. If I come to my colleagues who are on small companies, or if you know I think this makes a difference. User base makes a difference. The reason I think ChatGPT it's big on the market, it's because it's the most popular one. Everybody's
Mm.
using it. Not everybody's quite it's quite anybody. If you think about the number of people using AI, ChatGPT has a pretty good large amount of users, and that's the same. The reason we have Spotify is not because, maybe it is because it is the best music streamer, but all of my friends are on Spotify. All of the playlists are in there, so it plays a big fact that I remember the first one of the first things that sucked me into Uber was you get a free ride. The
Mm.
first one is, I think everybody used that. Maybe if I remind correctly, maybe I even had like multiple accounts to have multiple free rides. That's okay, but now going from zero to a lot of users, I think that's pretty important. And yeah, it's tough for AEC though, because it's a small number of people, right? It's not like billions of people, but I think Revit has a lot of users. So maybe what we should look into is like, what's the number of people using Revits? That's the market that we should fight for. Not that we're doing Revit competitors, but it's just a good notion,
Mm.
of people. I think AutoCAD and Revit are pretty distributed. It's like Coca-Cola; it's everywhere. Um, so I think it's a good uh, thing to look at.
Yeah, designers uh, are a tough crowd to make money and to migrate from one software to another. So I, 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 I learned the hard way. But
Do you
okay,
think
you
so?
mentioned, dude, I was very close to make a web-based startup for AI native modeling, and I know what I was getting into, the minimum feature set, the migration. So it's
Right,
it's a cool, interesting problem, but I follow this framework like the urgency, the buying capacity, like as you were saying correctly, it might be easier to sell $15 subscription versus $5,000 subscription to a firm, although it does that. It's still you're fighting for pennies in that market. So yeah.
right,
But you
yeah.
mentioned about raising the ocean. Let's move to 2030 and raise the ocean 5 centimeter. What's futuristic, or what's an ideal software world in AC looks like, or what are the UI UX you would like to have in that?
Mhm. I think if I could raise the ocean a little bit, would be uh, not to. I think files are really good, but having no files, I think, would be best. To work on software, or having software available where things are automatically saved. It don't takes forever to save stuff. I think that's step number one. Step number two would be to be more collaborative. I think most of the softwares these days are single player mode, and I would really love to see multiplayer. It's kind of interesting because, as you said, Meyer, you said that designers are a tough crowd. And then there's this article when Figma started doing the multiplayer thing, and people, oh, but everybody can see what I'm working on at the moment. Yeah, it's real time. Everybody is, no, but I just want them to see when I'm done. But those are things that they get moved. People
Hmm.
just get used to. It's like it's okay to be a little bit messy. and I would really love to see what that would look like for AEC. More real time, multiplayer, and then cloud based. I think we are in good direction. When I look at the products on the market right now, I think it's in good direction. We need more of we need bridges to jump into the past to the future, and that's hopefully where my team can contribute. Because we work from inside. So what I'm very interested in is like build bridges to the future, to 2030. I love when I get to do that. We had a few opportunities to do so, and when we do that, it feels great.
Interesting. Now I have $1 million question.
A
What's your
million
se- yeah, what's your secret of winning hackathons?
focusing on the problem. I, that's the key, Meyer, of winning hackathons. I think, for example, um, um, the fact that hackathons are not only for developers, people simply cannot understand that. A lot of people will not come to hackathons because they think they can't write code, because they think that they are not going to be useful. So I think not only for hackathons, but for technology on AEC, if you're working on problems that are important, it doesn't really matter the programming language that you're using or the technology stack if you manage to solve the problem. Of course, if you pick the wrong stack, you might end up not solving the problem, right? But that's okay. There's plenty of scenarios where you don't solve the problem. Just make sure that you're always focusing on the problem. And usually, a good thing to do in hackathons is if you bring people on your team that are not a developer, they will be able to focus on the problem and not how you're going to be able to tackle it. If you look at, I think the most fun hackathons we've done, we always bring our UX design colleagues or our BIM expert colleagues because they have a deep detachment from technology,
Mm,
and they will be able to say like, this doesn't, I can't understand what you're telling me. And you're just like, yeah, but we're gonna use a real time database, blah blah blah. And then it's like, yeah, but doesn't matter.
mm,
I thought that you would be using that for sure. But so one thing we do a lot, it's like also branding. It helps you. What is the name of this thing we're gonna work on? How people are gonna look at it. Is it gonna be? I remember one of the hackathons we did in Copenhagen. I'm not sure we won that time. We spent a lot of time looking at e-commerce clothing websites because we were like, yeah, maybe this is the grid, the vibe we want people to have. And then those things, are just silly things, but they might be a big differentiator for your user. So if you're thinking about what is that the user are going to feel, how fast is it going to be, how are things going to, these are like problems, that people have, how things are going to be implemented. First of all, in a hackathon, you have 24 hours. So you're probably going to write shitty code. Don't try to write clean code. It's just like uh, weird. But yeah, I guess focusing on the problems. That's maybe the best advice I can give to people. And then after you identify some problems, if you're working on AEC, I think this is the first thing we talk about this on this call. There will come more problems, and those problems, they will sound very important. They might be more important than the problem that you had a month ago. You have to have some sort of relationship with the problems. Like, no, I even though this new thing, how can I? Because there's just a couple of hours on the week. You don't have every time. So when you pick a problem, make sure there's like, man, what's gonna happen if I get attached to this? If I enter this relationship for 6 months or a year, um, is this really something I would like to? um, because if not, you're probably gonna get tired of the problem, and then you're gonna find another one and another one and another one. So I think caring about the problems you pick, it's also important, because yeah, there will come others for sure on your table.
Yeah, that's so true. And from my hackathon experience, can also tell like you learn so much in a short period of time because by looking at how others are working, the way they think, and that was like my first AC Tech hackathon was my like transition that oh I really want to go instruct software development role because I could see how the software developers and I was just like an idea guy in that team just monitoring and okay if they're uh, bug fixing I was like okay let me look at Stack Overflow and if I can be of any help but it's and even the bonds you form in those 24 hours are amazing. You meet so many interesting people. So do you have any funny memory at any of the hackathon?
In hackathons,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, the first hackathon was actually fun, because I was just a student in Copenhagen and I didn't know anyone. And I was like, oh my God, they have a really cheap student ticket. It
Mm.
was something less than 100 Danish kronas. And I'm sorry, I have no idea how to make that exchange. It's cheap. So I bought the ticket one day before the hackathon. And back then, I didn't know any programming. I knew a little bit of Grasshopper. Then I joined the event. The first thing I've noticed, it started on Friday evening. There was dinner. I was like, free dinner, free dinner. I was like, okay, this is great. And then when they announced it, oh, we're gonna start the event and blah blah. And by the way, there's gonna be free breakfast and lunch. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing already. I'm ready to solve this industry. Let's go. And then, as you said, I kind of knew already Ryan. Ryan
Mm.
Hughes. Back then, I knew him from LinkedIn and blah blah blah. I didn't know him personally, but one of my colleagues from uni knew him. I was like, "Hey, dude, can you introduce me?" And then I met with Ryan. I was like, "Hey, dude, I just want to work with you, and if you don't mind, I can do whatever." I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So we worked on, and then this first hackathon, I did slides. You know, I did the slides, which are pretty important. We won that year with Ryan. He's actually working on that project right now, Fabrify. Um, but it was just so much fun because I was just looking and observing.
Mm.
Oh my God, this is how he's doing this, and there's this other developer, and I was doing the slides. So I was choosing: should we use hero icons or should we use material UI? That was my hackathon contributions. I was picking the icons and the color and the font of the things. And I actually, because Ryan was already super experienced, I'm pretty sure he looked at my slides like this just looked horrible, and he was moving things. I was just happy to, because I had the conversation with him about what language should I learn
Mm.
on that event. We went for coffee. I was like, "Hey Ryan, what do you think I should learn?" And he said like, "Yeah, Python or C sharp. That's all good, man. Just go for it." And then I went, and it actually was amazing. We actually had the opportunity to work on the same company a few I think 2 years later. So that was great and fun. And then there's lots of fun memories. I work with very fun people, and when we go to these hackathons, we go a little bit wild. We've worked in now we went to New York. We worked from the cab. We hacked from the bedroom, and it's a lot of fun pictures that I have on my phone from hackathon. And you meet people. It's pretty good. And I think I also have the opportunity right now to go on a few conferences a year to keep myself updated. And then I keep coming back to hackathons because those are events where you actually produce something,
Mm.
even if it's like crappy code. You produce something, you do something, and you do something in a group. And I think that's so valuable. In I don't know, going in certain conferences, it can be quite demanding. People will try to sell your stuff, and it's not, I think, as productive as hackathons are.
Yeah, that's true. And I always see, like, some for hackathons, I am not able to participate. Just keep on seeing on LinkedIn people sharing about their project work and the excitement. And there's always story of one person doing hackathon for the first time. It's like, it was such an amazing experience. I've never heard like, oh, this is my first hackathon. I didn't enjoy.
Yeah, I think this is, there is something about this is, and this is like, I have a colleague working with me, Ellen, and she's a UX designer. She has this diagram. It's a triangle where, you know, you research, test, implement, and then it's a little circle, and you always want to do that in a very short time
Mhm.
because of this, someone's fallacy, or I think it's Concord fallacy, and the fact that on hackathons you commit so small amount of time that it creates this excitement, as you say, Meyer, that people are like, oh my god, I did this in such a small amount of time, and I don't have to commit like, it's not like I need to continue with this. I did that and that's it. And yeah, it's hard to reproduce that into normal regular days, but it's an interesting thing as well.
Yeah. So Victor Daniel came on the show and he shared about area sync, the Chrome extension, and other products you guys were building. Anything you learned after so many products, and now you do product development differently? Or,
Yes, I think like one thing for sure that I've learned is like the importance of user experience, and then kind of thinking of, I know it's gonna sound a little, it might, this might not relate to everybody. As I said, like I work on a very big company. Most companies don't get the chance to experience this, but user experience and product are just so much helpful in guiding you, identifying the problems, scoping what's the size of the problem, what's the first part of the problem I'm going to solve, and what's the second, and then move on, and how do you keep. I think one thing that I've learned since I've joined is like, okay, to do stuff or to do meaningful products, I cannot do it by myself. I need a team. So it's a team job. It's very important that the team is not only developers, and this is something I we struggle a lot because the last 10 years of design technology was about the heroes, you know, the people who were jamming on the code and they were doing the plugins and they were like the heroes. I think the phase I'm living right now is not about the heroes, but it's about the users. We have to be able to deploy products that are easily accessible, they're easy to understand, and now we're focusing on the users. And so a lot of things I've learned is like, I don't do demos anymore so much. Like myself, I've deployed a solution or a product, and I will wait for the user to make the demo, because if there is no demo, they're not using. It's not important, you know. Um, so, for example, now we have a pretty good UX design process that takes us from the moment where the problem is raised or a flag is raised by someone. We take notes. We of course we're very busy with the current problem, so it's not like we can take these new ones. We always think about, okay, who's going to be using this. The easy answer, it's always like, oh, it's going to be for everybody. Everybody's going to be using it. It's like, but really, um, the head of finance, he's gonna open this Revit plugin? No, it's not. So it's not everybody, right? So funnel down, identify, put names, maybe. Like usually, we do um, some exercises like, okay, we think that this solution or this technology, it would be very useful for BIM managers, or BIM manager is a good one. I was like, can we name 10 BIM managers, like put their name here, and then let's call them, Usually we don't know these people; they're sitting across the world. So we call them. It's like we do we do product. A lot of product. I think you were familiar with that, Mario. You have your own startups, and I think that's the next step of design technology. I don't think product happened on the last 10 years. Now it's on the books, people can read about it, the good examples, the bad examples, and then we are ready to apply that into AC. And I think that's so good. um, there is like a few things to overcome. It's like, as an architectural design studio, should we hire UX designers? Should we hire cloud developers? What are the roles that we need to hire to have the capacity to develop those products internally? Usually the budget's not so strong because we are like adjacent to the core of the business, right? We're not the main part of the business. But I'm actually quite proud and happy with the setup we have at Perkins and Will at the moment, where we have UX designers, we have a team of UX designers, and um, this is very unique in the industry right now, I would say, for to have this kind of personnel within the company. I think that differentiates us a lot. It certainly helps my job a lot because it's way more applied, it's focused on the user, and so on. So it defends the technology team a lot. And I've learned this um, after I started my job. Before, I was thinking like, yeah, I'm gonna write my Grasshopper plugin and it's gonna be amazing. But now it's more like, as a team, what's the problems we can solve? Yeah,
Dude, that's such a great answer. And I can like correlate a lot because I'm like, as a structural engineer, I was like, what's the most complex problem I can engineer? What's the cool? And then like from product development style, people don't appreciate if you optimize or engineers if they are not able to adopt. Like, how can you put them first rather than complexity first? And that changes like even bringing them as part of the experience. How what's the best way where you could hide complexity and just show just enough so they don't have the cognitive load. And it takes time and practice, like a lot of failed experiments, a lot of uh, A/B testing. But I think it's so important you mentioned.
yeah, yeah. It's good. It's exciting. I think it's a different phase from the time where I was studying. So it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah. Domain experts and domain users are the new heroes who just want to like passionate to work with technologies and build great automations, because there are a lot of cool tools in our industry with very low adoption, and in order to fix that we need them. So I have a fun rapid fire round. You'll Most of the guests find it challenging. So because you have
Right.
like 5 seconds to answer and you have to keep it super brief. So let's see if you pass this. Uh,
Let's go.
okay. Who's your role model?
Role model. Oof. I don't know. I don't have a role model. Um, I like Steve Jobs a little bit. I think he did great as a designer. Yeah.
A book which made a big impact in your life.
An engineer who imagines, the one that we
Uh,
spoke about. That's
yeah.
like great book.
I see. A movie which you visit or watch often.
A movie.
Mm.
Oh my god, I c- I never get tired of the Lord of the Rings, the movies. I was watching today at the gym, to be honest. So on the treadmill, seeing Frodo, walk by, it's just so good. Yeah, I have a little note, actually not here, but in the office. Have a quote from Gandalf. It's like, a wizard is never too late. He always arrives when he means to. And I think that's a I think I take on my life as well. So I'm a big fan.
I see. A city which is in your travel bucket list.
Oh man, I really want to go to Japan. I've never been before, so yeah, it's certainly on my go-to.
Best piece of advice you have received till date.
Best piece of advice I've received. Um, well, I think okay, I need to keep it short. So I'm not sure if this is good advice, but usually um, the problem is not as big as you have on your head. Um, Usually everyone has mechanisms to digest problems. Either you do some exercise, either you sleep on it, you take some time. um, so I think as a Brazilian I have a lot of passion when I'm talking about things, and then sometimes I overdo it a little bit. So I have some pretty good mentors who would say, like, Victor, dial down a little bit the passion, and then think about it, and then usually it's okay, if you can talk with people and if you can excuse yourself, say sorry. It's just pretty good advice is talk through your problems. They're not so big. Yeah.
Mhm. Three words your friend would describe you as.
My friends would describe me. I don't know, this is not fair, I'm not my friend, but I think my Brazilian friends would say that I talk too loud, maybe, that I'm fun. Um, and then I think my work colleagues would say that I work too much. Um, yeah, but I don't think I work too much, actually.
I can attest you're very fun from the time we hung out. You're a great company.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you had unlimited time and resources, what would you do?
If I had unlimited time and resources, I think, okay, this is out of AC. I hope that's okay, but that's something that I relate a lot, especially because I transition a lot from South America to Europe. And I think the planet in general hasn't solved the basics. There is plenty of places in the world where the basics are still a struggle. I would love to work on that if I could. Especially, I think I have a thing with buildings, and there is housing issues, but also infrastructure, transportation, food, even food, the way people have food. So I would probably work on some of those things. How to raise the ocean, right? I think the ocean is kind of tilted a little bit,
Mhm.
if that's not even possible in physics, but I think that's the reality right now. I would love to work on that if I could.
Your favorite restaurant in Brazil?
Eh, That's such a good question. Okay, my favorite restaurant in Brazil, hmm, it's a regional one. In Brazil, it's a very local food. We eat a lot of couscous in my region in Brazil. Couscous with meat and whatever you want. To be honest, there is a restaurant in my dad's city. It's a old lady with this massive pan. Great food. You have to go there. Not really fancy dining, but pretty solid. I can't wait to go there. Maybe I should go there while I'm here.
Yeah. I think I already know the answer. Are you a mountain person or a beach person?
Oh, beach. Always, always.
Is-
Yes.
In a city you want to retire?
A city I want to retire. My city. I think it's a pretty good one, especially for retirement. Like, yeah, I think if you want to work right now, like if I would try to find a computational design job in my city, there would be no jobs. But it's a pretty good one to retire. So it's called João Pessoa, Paraíba in Brazil. If anybody wants to look it up.
A thing which most people don't know about you but would be surprised to know.
I think people usually, I've heard this so many times. People take me for a serious person before they meet me. Um, for some reason, I think, yeah,
Like the LinkedIn personality. I don't know, but
yeah, maybe it's also like I have absolutely none of my personal friends are working on the same things as me, so I kind of have two lives, in a
mm,
way. I think people usually they just get to see the the LinkedIn the LinkedIn vibe. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, bro. Anything which we didn't cover in this interview, and you would like to end on that note?
No, I think we this was a good chat. This was fun to me, Meyer. We finally made it. I'm sorry. When you asked the first time, I don't think I had anything to say. But today I'm at home in Brazil. I feel good, and I think we had a pretty good conversation. I would say that you should keep doing this. I'm not sure you're doing on the same regularity as you were doing before. I think you need to step back, because as a watcher, I miss those things, and because I want to know what other people are doing. So thanks for running the show, and I hope that it's not gonna end.
I'm super fortunate to host people like you, and just gives me more excitement to do more interviews. There's so many stories to be shared, and people are doing so much amazing work. So yeah, we got definitely 10 on 10. So thanks a lot, Victor.
Super.